Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by State Farm.
Happy New Year and welcome to Championship Week. Congrats on making it this far. This is Fantasy Football Live, and we're here to get you set for the all-important final matchup in your fantasy leagues and a look ahead to 2022 as we wrap up this season. The gang's all here. I'm Liz Loza with fantasy analyst Andy Behrens and Matt Harmon, daily fantasy analyst Tank Williams, and Minty Betts holding down the fort on the betting front. As we kick off our season finale, let's take a look at who our fantasy MVPs were in 2021. Andy, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, listen, I don't see how it's not Cooper Kupp. He appears on nearly 70% of the top 500 Yahoo fantasy teams, which is easily the highest percentage of any player. He's got a very good chance to break the single season marks for both receptions and receiving yards with 2 games to go. He's also outscored the number 2 fantasy wide receiver in Yahoo default scoring by nearly 70 points. Only 4 other wide receivers are within 100 points of Cooper Kupp in default scoring. So for me, with all due respect to Jonathan Taylor and others, it's got to be Kupp.
All right, Tank, how about you? Who are you feeling?
I mean, I got to go with Deebo Samuel. I know how Andy loves Cooper Kupp, and rightfully so. Like, Cooper is bald, but I think I have to throw in, like, my just personal experience with Deebo, just because when you look at auction leagues, like, I got Deebo for $12, where Cooper Kupp went for $23. He's like the second leading scorer in fantasy football as far as wide receivers. He's the best wide receiver and running back on this team. And let's not forget, he made my man Brandon Ayuk misplaced his name for about 3/4 of the season. So for that reason alone, I feel like he should be an MVP. But let's not forget about my man Derrick Henry, though. Like, Derrick Henry is still 10th in overall fantasy running back points, and he only played 8.5 games. Like, I feel like we've been hyping up Jonathan Taylor, and he deserves all that extra sugar in this Kool-Aid. But let's not forget about Derrick Henry, because I'm also in a fantasy final because of that run Derrick Henry went on to start the season.
All right, Matt, how you feeling about Tank's pick there?
I think we'll come back to Tank a little bit later. We're going to just leave that for now. It's embarrassing that Tank's still doing this. I mean, after all these weeks, unbelievable. But anyways, we'll come back to that later. I love the mentions so far. This has been great. You know, Cooper Kupp has been awesome. Deebo Samuel's been awesome. You drafted these guys in, like, the middle rounds, and you've just been going to easy street ever since then. But let's not forget, we said the name a couple times. We'll just say it officially here. Jonathan Taylor is my pick for fantasy MVP, not just because he's been the best running back in the game, you know, by a pretty good amount, too. It's been a pretty decent gap between Jonathan Taylor and everybody else. But also, let's not forget that back in August drafts, this guy was not even going, you know, barely, maybe first round, maybe at the 1-2 turn. Sometimes you could get him in the second round when people were hand-wringing about Carson Wentz and some of those offensive line foot injuries. He was a value there. I mean, guys like Saquon Barkley ahead of him in some ADP. I mean, give me a break. If you drafted Saquon Barkley over Jonathan Taylor, you haven't stopped puking since August. So he did come at some sort of a discount there, and he has been amazing. I just think he does deserve to be officially mentioned. You know, not just a, yes, of course, Jonathan Taylor. Let's actually give him a real mention there.
Well, we've mentioned wide receivers. We've mentioned a running back. I can't close out this season without a little peach season shout out. So for me, it's Mark Andrews. This man keeps balling out regardless of who is under center. He has cleared 100 yards for 3 very important weeks in a row. He's also recorded 4 scores over that 3-week span, bringing his current total to 9 touchdowns. He's number 1 in targets, receptions, air yards, and fantasy points per game. He has unseated Travis Kelce as fantasy's best player at the position and was a steal in the 5th round of fantasy drafts back in August. I'm playing him today in the hope that he can bring it for 1 more week. Minty, you have been bringing it all season while keeping us informed on betting trends, but which player or team was the best bet for you?
Ooh, my best bet, my most memorable bet would be in week 7 when the Bengals just blew out the Ravens. And this one was important because Jared Quay and I went head-to-head on this one. The Bengals were 7-point underdogs, and they were plus 240 to win straight up. And, you know, the Bengals won. And the most memorable and funniest thing is that Jared, after that game, said, "I'm glad the Ravens lost. They can't win too many games." So that was just pretty memorable.
Like much of this season, unexpected and fun. Please send any and all championship questions that you have to the hashtag AskFFL on Twitter, or drop one in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can on the show. Plus, as always, Scott Pianowski is offering roster advice live on Twitter right there at the Yahoo Fantasy handle. All right, let's turn our attention to Week 17 now and the latest injury news. Mike Evans was listed as questionable ahead of the Bucs tilt with the Jets. He is active, but will reportedly be limited. Also, Antonio Brown is active for Tampa Bay. Ravens receiver Marquise Brown was held out of practice this week due to a non-COVID related illness, but he is active today against the Rams. One other quick note on the early games, Carson Wentz will start for Indianapolis today after clearing COVID protocols. Broncos running backs Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams both listed as questionable and are both expected to play this afternoon versus the Chargers. 49ers running back Eli Mitchell is expected to return today after the knee injury that has kept him sidelined for a few weeks. Also of note, Jimmy Garoppolo is not expected to play today per Adam Schefter. So Trey Lance draws in, and that is the perfect segue to our first over-under. Andy, let's go.
Yeah, seamless segue there. We're talking Trey Lance. This is a guy that I don't think we've even mentioned over the last 2 months, but Jimmy Garoppolo not expected to go today. That means the rookie is actually going to see some time, and we set a fairly modest number here at 259.5 total yards, combined yards, passing and rushing for Trey Lance, and I am taking the over in this thing. Let's remember, in his earlier start this season, his one start this season, he had 16 carries, which is a total that quarterbacks just don't reach. It's only happened 6 times, or at least for 6 individual quarterbacks since the merger. He's got the full gang with him this week. He's got Kittle, he's got Ayuk, whose name we now mention, all of us apparently. He's got Debo, he's got Mitchell, he's got them all. If you look at the opponent, it's Houston. They allow 4.7 yards per carry to opposing rushers. They give up 6.8 yards per pass attempt. The matchup is perfect. Yes, give me the over. Liz, do you agree?
I definitely agree. I mean, you mentioned the matchup and how Houston is so vulnerable versus the run. Trey Lance has not been spectacular as a passer, right? In his one start, under 52% completion percentage. But when you think about his legs, those 14 touchdowns in college, man, you can't get away from 2019, right? And so I also think when we look at the matchup, the Texans have allowed the most rushing scores to opposing quarterbacks. So I think he should get plenty of run here. Plus, all of his pass catchers are really good after the catch, which also bodes well for padding these stats. I will definitely take the over.
Matt, I've seen your bold prediction later in the show, so there's no way you're taking the under here, right?
Oh, well, correct. Yeah, no way I'm taking the under. I am going to go over as well. You guys mentioned it. I mean, the Texans stink against the ground game. Trey Lance, they leaned into this heavily last time he started. I mean, that was all the way back in week 5. You know, they were 24th in neutral pass rate that week among all teams. Like, they were definitely leaning on Trey Lance's ability to run. I think they will do that again here. But Andy, I love that you bring up, like, this passing game looked a hell of a lot different back then. You know, no George Kittle. We got George Kittle back. Brandon Ayuk is out of the doghouse now. That situation's over with. Tank kind of lives in the past every now and again, but we are living in the future here. We're living in the current reality, which is this passing game could be a little more opened up. And, of course, Trey Lance has reportedly been kind of decent in practice. And we know how much that matters for Kyle Shanahan. A lot. We've learned that this year.
There it is, a clean sweep. More over-unders later in the show. Right now, let's send it to State Farm's own Tank Williams to talk a little DFS.
Yes, Tank from State Farm. Holla. It's time for our surprisingly great rates presented by State Farm. Now, my DFS value plays can fit any budget, just like State Farm offers surprisingly great rates with coverage that meets your needs. Now, let's dig into the Sunday night matchup with the Vikings beaming themselves into Green Bay without Captain Kirk in this Sunday night matchup. And honestly, like, the Vikings beat the Green Bay Packers earlier this season, so I'm expecting a bounce back like none other, which is why I'm going with the Green Bay defense for $12 in this one. I mean, the weather's going to be cold. It's supposed to be like 8 degrees at kickoff. The Vikings are going with a backup quarterback. We have like one of our old co-workers who is like a diehard Viking fan, and when he heard they were starting Sean Mannion, I knew I had to go ahead and play the Green Bay Packers defense. So everything is kind of forming up together. I feel like the Green Bay Packers defense is going to get themselves together. Bad weather, backup quarterback. This is a recipe for them to go off. On the flip side, I'm going with Dalvin Cook. So even when the Green Bay Packers defense has a good outing against the Vikings, Dalvin Cook seems to always break a run every now and then. I feel like with that backup quarterback, they're going to lean heavily on the run game, bad weather. That's when you need to get your running back involved. I don't think he goes off. He may break a long run or so, but I think that Cook is a nice play off of how I feel like the Green Bay Packers are going to attack that Minnesota Vikings offense. And so, for my superstar today, I'm going with Aaron Jones. Like, if you look at the first matchup, I think my man Aaron Rodgers had 4 touchdowns that he threw. Devontae Adams had like 115 yards, 2 tubs. I feel like this would be an Aaron Jones / A.J. Dillon game with a little bit more going with Aaron Jones in the run and pass game. And so I feel like Aaron Jones would be a nice pivot play with a lot of people looking at that Vikings pass defense and expecting Aaron Rodgers and Devontae to go off, which they could, but with this bad weather, cold weather, I feel like it'll be a game where you can lean on the run. Now, for the Monday Night Football slate, like, honestly, I really can't tell you which team is going to win this one between Cleveland and Pittsburgh because it seems like neither team wants to win. So I have no conviction there, but I do have some trends that I would like to see. And my first play is going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's only $11 in this one. I feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers pass defense is giving up big play after big play all this year. If Baker Mayfield is going to be able to challenge that secondary, it's going to be with the deep ball. DPJ has been the option that he likes to attack defenses with down deep in the field, and so that's why I really like him. He's going to be a dart throw, but at $11, I'm sure you're willing to throw that dart. Now, on the flip side, I'm going with my man Nick Chubb. Like, that Pittsburgh defense, that run game, I mean, I remember Detroit getting off on. We've seen several running backs, Austin Ekeler, get off on these guys. And so when you have a guy like Nick Chubb, I feel like they're going to lean heavily on him. He only had like 16 carries, 61 yards in the first matchup. I feel like they really feed him heavily in this one. And for my superstar, I'm going with, well, no, actually Nick Chubb is my superstar, but Pat Freiermuth is going to be the guy that I run it back with Pittsburgh because I feel like he missed last game. The Cleveland Browns are missing their 2 starting safeties. And I feel like that's going to be big. Big Ben is going to need somebody to lean on because Denzel Ward is going to be covering over Deontay Johnson. So that's why I like Pat Freiermuth in this one. So these are my 3 plays. I don't know if either one of these guys will be a superstar, but I expect each one of these guys to get in the end zone, and that's why they're my plays. Nick Chubb should be that guy, though. He's my superstar. These are my picks. So whether you lace them up on Sundays or you're locking in your lineup at the last minute with us, State Farm offers surprisingly great rates on car insurance. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Get a quote today.
All right, guys, welcome to the Sportsbook. It's time for some trends. Now, Washington is 5-3 against the spread their last 20 matchups against the Eagles. They're 6-point underdogs today. Next up, the Packers are 9-5 against the spread as home favorites versus the Vikings their last 14 matchups. Packers are 12.5-point favorites tonight. And on Monday night, the Steelers are 19-1 straight up their last 20 games against the Browns in Pittsburgh. The Steelers are 3.5-point underdogs Monday night. I'll be back in a bit with my best bets for Week 17.
All right, let's get into our first check-in on social media this morning and answer some roster questions. Don't forget, you can still send your questions to the hashtag AskFFL. And our first tweet comes from Adrian. It is a flex question in half-point PPR. OBJ at Baltimore, that secondary obviously struggling. Jarrett Patterson in replacement of Antonio Gibson, who's on the COVID list, versus Philly. Or KJ Osborne, remember, no Adam Thielen at Green Bay, obviously dealing with a little bit of a quarterback situation, which Tank mentioned. In fact, because you mentioned it, Tank, why don't you take this first question?
Man, for me, it's between OBJ and Patterson. We know that Antonio Gibson is going to play, so I expect Patterson to get a lot of volume. I really like this matchup for Matthew Stafford, though, against that Baltimore Ravens secondary. You know, OBJ doesn't get the number of targets that Cooper Kupp gets, but I feel like he could have a couple explosive pass plays in this one. If you're looking for some upside, I go with OBJ. If you're looking for a low floor, that's going to be Patterson, but you know he's going to get a lot of totes in that one against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Volume over ceiling, and I'm with you. I'd take OBJ as well. Next question is from Shaner. Needs 1 flex standard scoring. Thank you for clarifying that, Shaner. T. Higgins versus Kansas City. Amon Ross St. Brown. Have a feeling we'll get a lot of questions about him at Seattle. Or Rashad Penny versus Detroit. Andy, which of these flex options are you feeling?
Yeah, I like St. Brown a lot, but I don't think he belongs in the conversation with the other two here. T. Higgins has just been so good, so bankable. It's 100 yards a week. It's usually a touchdown. Rashad Penny obviously has the matchup and could certainly go off in this one. But for me, this is going to be Higgins because it's been, I don't know, like while he's been healthy this year, it's been basically a month and a half in which he's been an absolute beast for fantasy purposes, and I would expect it to continue this week. As long as that guy's healthy, he's just been an absolute superstar.
There you go, Shaner. Next question is from Locke. Ooh, Matt, I am definitely giving you this one. It's a quarterback question. Aaron Rodgers versus Minnesota. Dak versus Arizona. Highest over-under of the week, by the way, in that Cowboys-Cardinals game. Or your boy, Trey Lance versus Houston.
It got me real nervous when you were throwing this to me right away. Yeah, listen, I like Trey Lance a lot this week. I like Trey Lance a lot going forward. I don't know that I could play him, though, over these two guys this week. I mean, Dak looked so good coming off that game last week. I mean, 11.5 average depth of target. That was his highest since week 9. They really were pushing that ball down the field. I love to see that. But Rodgers, Sunday Night Football against the Vikings, I think that's the direction I would probably go. I love the way this offense looks right now. I think I would probably end up going with Rodgers in a game where I think they could just embarrass the Vikings with Sean Mannion at quarterback. Like I could easily see Rodgers throwing 3 touchdowns. That's probably the direction I would go there. It's close between him and Dak.
Rodgers throwing 3 touchdowns definitely makes sense. All right. This last question is from Kyle for the trophy. No pressure, guys. Alan Lazard, Brandon Ayuk, or AJ Green. Andy, as the level-headed Ayuk optimist, shall we say, why don't you take this question?
Had to go to a neutral party for this. Yeah, I respect it. I understand it. I am, in fact, going to go Brandon Ayuk in this one. I know it's Trey Lance, and maybe we worry about him as a passer a little bit, but my goodness, the matchup is so good. Houston, again, allowing almost 8 yards per pass attempt on the season. Ayuk has been a relatively bankable fantasy commodity over the past couple months. I think it's got to be him for me, just ahead of Lazard.
Well, there you have it. It is now time for our first break here on Fantasy Football Live. You know that we love over-unders here on FFL. So we got Austin Ekeler's take on some of our own fearless forecasts in this week's Ekeler's Edge. Don't go away.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management. How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon.
Yeah,
The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed.
Yeah.
Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
All right, let's jump into our fantasy freebies. You know the deal here. This is where we talk about some players that are under 25% started but can help you this week, of all weeks, win a championship. You're going to need the help, maybe. I mean, it's crazy, Tank and Andy. It's like we're in championship week, but there's still a lot of folks out there sending me some questions with goofballs in their roster because of just the way this season is ending. Tank, let's get it started here. You've got a quarterback pick for people who might be hurting out there.
Yeah, I mean, we see where guys like Kirk Cousins and these other ones can't play, so are you really going to ride Sean Mannion for a ship? I don't think so. So I'm going with Taysom Hill. Like, I still can't believe that he's still under that ownership threshold where I can actually play him, but this dude is an amazing pick. Obviously, the matchup isn't the one that you would want versus Carolina, I mean, but it's doable. But what I really like about Taysom Hill is the high floor that you get with his legs. Like, we know that Sean Payton isn't scared to run them. We know that he's a competent passer. He's played against tough defenses before, like, you know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers threw 4 picks and still had over 20 fantasy points. So are you really going to be scared to play Taysom Hill against the Carolina Panthers? Like, no, I don't think so. And so when I think about going into the fantasy championship, I'd rather go with a known quantity where I've seen what he's done against layup matchups and tough matchups versus going with the unknown. And so that's why I feel comfortable going with Taysom Hill today.
Can't wait to watch that game between two offenses that rank 31st and 32nd in efficiency over the last month. That should be pretty exciting, but I do like Taysom Hill in that game overall. Andy, give me a pick at the running back position for the people out there.
Yeah, Tank doesn't want to go with an unknown, but don't worry, I've got an unknown for you. I am trying to will this into existence because I need to play him in at least one matchup, and it's going to be Jaret Patterson for me. Playing today in relief of Antonio Gibson, who's on the COVID list. That should mean a serious workload for Patterson. And he was a full workload guy at the college level. He gained 2,000 scrimmage yards a couple years ago at Buffalo in the MAC, had 20 touchdowns. Last year, he had a single game with over 400 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. So highly productive collegiate runner in the MAC. He had a touchdown against Philadelphia a couple weeks ago, 9 carries last week against Dallas. Philadelphia's been a pretty good run D, but they have allowed 15 rushing touchdowns. So I'm thinking there's a good shot here at, say, 80 total yards and a touchdown for Patterson. That would satisfy. That's all I'm asking.
Really thought Antonio Gibson was going to carry me to my consolation bracket title, but alas, COVID ruins yet another thing, a very important one at that. All right, my pick here is Rashad Bateman. Really like Bateman a lot, of course, going forward, but especially this week, too. Marquise Brown didn't practice, like, essentially all week with a non-COVID-related illness, so that could push Bateman more into the pecking order, more into the game plan. There's also several wide receiver absences, lower down the depth chart for Baltimore. Again, just pushing things up for Bateman. This is a guy who is consistently, I know his involvement has been kind of hit or miss, of course, but he did catch a touchdown last week. He's steadily been number 2 on the team in terms of wide receivers in routes run over the last few weeks. So obviously going to be a volatile guy. You can't bank on the target share for him like you can bank on it with Mark Andrews. But I do think if you are looking for a wide receiver 4 or a flex play, something like that, I think Bateman in a potentially high scoring game with Tyler Huntley at least playing, thank God, then we can chase Bateman there for some juice, some potential upside in that matchup. All right, well, a guy we never have to worry about when he's on the field and available, a guy who's not volatile at all, that's Austin Ekeler. We love him. Let's hear what he had to say this week with Liz.
We're going to play a game of over-under with 3 elite fantasy players. Can they finish in style and win a ship for their managers, or will they fail to meet expectations? Sound good, Austin?
Yeah, I'm talking elite players, so they better be showing up to the plate. Let's see what we got.
All right, let's start with fantasy's tight end 1, the Ravens' Mark Andrews. In week 16, with journeyman Josh Johnson behind center, Andrews reeled in 8 grabs on 10 targets, recording 125 yards and a score. Here is what Scott Pianowski is projecting for Andrews in week 17 at home versus the Rams.
I know the Rams are a difficult defense, but you're going to play Andrews. He's produced with every Baltimore quarterback, so it doesn't even matter who's under center. I think he's in for another big game in the fantasy finals. You need a forecast. Let's go with 7 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown for Mark Andrews in week 17.
So, Austin, are you taking the over or the under?
This is a tough one just because, the quarterback situation over there, Lamar Jackson being out. But here's the thing. This Mark Andrews guy, he is like the staple of that offense. He's super athletic for how big he is. So I think I'm going to take the over for this because I think they're going to have to give him the ball.
I am totally with you. I agree that Andrews is the engine that runs much of this offense, particularly if Lamar misses another game. And while he's been on a tear of 100+ yard outings, he's done all of that without Lamar on the field. So why not, in what we're expecting to be a high-scoring game against LA here, I too will take the over. Let's move to the wide receiver position. The Rams' Cooper Kupp has been a beast for pretty much the entire season. He leads all wideouts in virtually every category. He's cleared 100 yards in 4 straight games and had fewer than 90 yards just one time all season. Here is what Andy Behrens is projecting for Kupp in Week 17 at the Ravens.
We are way past caring about the opponent with Cooper Kupp, right? He's just an every week set it and forget it star, but he does get Baltimore this week, and they're ranked dead last against the pass right now. I'm going to give him 11 catches here, 184 yards, and 2 scores.
184! Jeez! Oh, sheesh. Look, this man is having a legendary season, but man, that is up there. I'm going to take the under. I just think 184 is ridiculous. So that is the reason I'm taking the under, not because he's not a capable player.
Sorry, Andy. Austin thinks 184 is, quote, ridiculous. And by the way, so do I. Like, I understand that the Ravens secondary has been decimated with injuries and other issues, but nearly 200 yards and 2 touchdowns? Like, do I think Cooper Kupp will clear 100 yards? Yeah. Will he clear 125 yards? Sure. Could he flirt with 140 yards? Yeah. But 184, I got to take the under just to manage expectations, too. On to the backfield and our very own Austin Ekeler. You are 4th in total yards, 2nd in total touchdowns, 1st in receiving touchdowns and receiving yards, and 2nd in fantasy points. Austin, I was tasked with the running back projections for this week. Here is my fearless forecast for you versus Denver. 14 carries for 67 rushing yards and a touchdown, plus 3 catches for 25 receiving yards. That is 92 total yards and a touchdown. So, Austin, are you taking the over or the under on my projection?
That's solid. That's really solid. Like, I feel like that's like right where I'm in. Like, I'm in that range of like maybe flirting with over or under 100 yards and maybe a score in there, which I've had a streak, so let's keep that streak going. I'm taking the over though. I need to break 100. I need to break 100, especially, you know, this week for not just my own team, the Chargers, but also fantasy championship weeks and playoffs. A lot of people depended on me that missed out last week because I was sitting on my couch. Definitely need to come back and break 100 for myself. That's my own personal goal for this and get in the end zone. So
I don't mind being wrong if you hit the over, friend. Let's go. All right, it is time to get into some flex questions from the hashtag Make Your Pick at Yahoo Fantasy. Andy, you are joining me for this. I don't know if we'll receive any Cooper Kupp questions. The first one, though, is from Sergeant Fox. He needs 2 flexes, 1 flex, 1 wide receiver, half-point PPR between Brandon Ayuk versus Houston, Michael Pittman versus Vegas, Tyler Lockett versus Detroit, or Keenan Allen versus Denver. Happy New Year. He's going for the championship. I'm going to start first, right? Mike Williams is back, so ostensibly that affects Keenan Allen, but I'm not worried about it. I think it might actually help him. We know he can still ball, so I'm definitely starting him. He drew double-digit targets when they played Denver last time. Tyler Lockett had his down game out of the way last week, which to me means he's just going to bounce back this week. That is how the Tyler Lockett train goes. So I'm going to take Lockett and Allen. Do you disagree?
No, I don't disagree. Also, I just got to say, I did not take Austin Ekeler for a coward. I'm shocked that he would take the under on that projection. Seems like a perfectly reasonable Andy Behrens projection. But no, I'm with you on this. It's got to be Lockett and it's got to be Keenan Allen. There's no benching Keenan Allen in championship week. I mean, this is one of those scenarios where we talk ourselves into some crazy things, but you can't sit Keenan Allen coming off one quiet game.
Right. All right. So we agree on that. By the way, I have to tell you that, like, after he heard your projection, Austin did, we like had to stop down for a second because he was like, did I mishear that? Is it correct? Like, was that really what he said? And I was like, no, that's like, keep going.
Does he even watch these games? Does he even watch these games? Come on.
True. He knows nothing. All right, next question. Poor James is like, please answer this question. James needs 2. It's a PPR. DeAndre Swift coming back at Seattle. Darrell Williams, no CEH at Cincinnati. T. Higgins versus Kansas City. And Rashad Penny at Detroit. I'll let you start this one.
Yeah, once again, I am not sending T. Higgins to the bench in the most important matchup of my fantasy year. That's not happening. In full PPR, I kind of want DeAndre Swift here. And I can make a case for the other guys, right? Like Darrell Williams in a great spot without CEH, and Rashad Penny's in a great spot against Detroit. But boy, in a full PPR, I don't think I could send DeAndre Swift to the bench either. He was on pace for just an absolutely ridiculous reception season before the injuries kicked in. So I want him going today, and definitely T. Higgins.
All right, I'm actually in agreement. By the way, T. Higgins, that game against Kansas City, second highest over-under projected per BetMGM of the week, so you definitely want all pieces involved there. Let's get to one more. It's from someone who has a bunch of characters. I'm not going to try saying this. Full PPR, need to flex. Darrell Williams at Cincinnati, Sony Michel at Baltimore, Tyler Lockett versus Detroit, Christian Kirk at Dallas, Isaiah McKenzie versus Atlanta. Ooh, Isaiah McKenzie after such a big week, but now we've got Gabe Davis and Cole Beasley back. For me, I am going to definitely ride Sony Michel, who has top 10 to 12 potential. You know, he's averaged, 22 carries per game over the last 4 weeks. So volume attached to that offense, I like a lot. And then it's between Darrell Williams or Tyler Lockett for me, floor versus ceiling. Indy, why don't you be the tiebreaker?
Yeah, I like your thinking on this so far, and I agree with you on McKenzie. Like, McKenzie would have been a really interesting play if Cole Beasley weren't involved in this one, but Beasley's back, so he's out of the equation here. I am going to go Tyler Lockett here. It's so close, but Lockett against Detroit just seems like the friendliest possible matchup. The one thing I worry about with Darrell Williams is that we probably are going to see some Derek Gore. It's not like Williams is going to slide in just 100% of the touches in this one. So that tips it in favor of Lockett.
All right, there you go. Sony Michel and Tyler Lockett. All right, now let's send it to Matt and Tank for a little fantasy face-off.
Yes, fantasy face-off with my good pal, my favorite colleague on the show, Tank. No, just kidding. I love you all equally.
I just love the way that
Tank...
rolls off your tongue.
All right, let's be professionals though. Let's be serious. Talk fantasy. It's championship week, all that stuff. We got snow on the ground, winter, whatever. Let's start with the running back position, Tank. You like Elijah Mitchell, very understandable. We've already talked about that. I like Rashad Penny. So why don't you start us off, because I am so gracious. You can go first and talk about Elijah Mitchell here.
I mean, well, Mitchell actually has the better matchup. The Houston Texans defense, they give up the third most fantasy points to running backs. We've already talked a lot about Trey Lance and what his running upside is, but at the same time, I feel like Shanahan loves to protect his quarterbacks. Like, he wanted to protect Jimmy G, so imagine what he's going to want to do to Trey just to try to make sure the Niners secure a playoff spot. So I feel like Elijah Mitchell, he's healthy, he's going to play, he's going to get a lot of totes against a team that even when they beat the Chargers last week, our man JJ had a day. So that's why I feel really comfortable with Elijah Mitchell going up against that Texas defense at home in a must-win game for the Niners.
Totally understandable. The matchup is great. Eli Mitchell, just 9 carries in that game where they had 29 rush attempts to 28 pass attempts there for, other way around, for Trey Lance in his first start with the 49ers. So little risky there, especially coming off an injury. I like Rashad Penny a lot, though, even just slightly over Eli Mitchell. I mean, you mentioned the matchup for Mitchell. The matchup is just as good for Penny there against the Detroit Lions. They're at home. Penny had 17 carries, just 4 for DJ Dallas last week. This is why you picked up Rashad Penny, for that matchup against the Bears, and this one, especially this week, in championship week against the Detroit Lions. I mean, my God, what a revival here for Rashad Penny. He's probably going to get the CMC deal from the Seahawks to justify that first-round pick here after he wins you your fantasy championship. But, Tank, again, we're professionals. We've made our case. Let's hear what the people had to say. It was almost dead even. What an unbelievable poll. We picked a good one here, Tank. This was very split. Yeah. The people just barely favor favor Rashad Penny over Eli Mitchell. That's closer than our daily fantasy standings will look like when we pull those up later. Unbelievable. All right, let's move on to wide receivers this week. Let's move on to wide receivers. And we're not even going to...
Even Joe Flacco won the Super Bowl, buddy.
And that's all that matters. And look at the money he keeps getting from that one win. I'm going to ride this thing for the next 20 years and feel pretty good about it. Although, hopefully I don't embarrass myself quite as bad as Joe Flacco. Let's talk wide receivers here. We've got Jalen Waddle versus T. Higgins. We've mentioned T. Higgins a decent amount on this show. Tank, back up all the optimism that people have out there for T. Higgins.
I mean, honestly, I really don't know if I need to back up the optimism now. Like, I feel like my man Rev has already talked up T. Higgins a lot. Lizzie has already talked up T. Higgins a lot. I mean, they're going against that matchup with Kansas City in one of the highest scoring games projected on the slate. And we just saw what he threw up last week with over 140-something yards, 2 tubs and all that. Multiple targets. He's gone over 100 yards. I don't know how many games in a row. Like, I don't see why you don't play T. Higgins, especially in the game where it's going to be a bad weather game in Nashville, and you're also going to have them focusing on trying to take away Waddle West. A lot of teams are going to focus on Jamar Chase, taking away Joe Mixon. Like, Higgins is going to get that easy work regardless, unlike Waddle.
I mean, that's very fair. That should be a fun game for fantasy. But Waddle, the volume is incredibly bankable. Tank, if people have been have they not been trying to take him away the entire season? Because if they've been trying, they haven't done a very good job. 9, 10, 11, and 12 targets over the last 4 games. You love that steady increase there for Jalen Waddle over the last 4 games that he's played. They were designing touches for him a ton against the Saints last week. Great matchup against the Titans, who have been just giving up fantasy points in bunches to wide receivers, giving up passing production to wide receivers all year. And even if the Titans pass rush is pretty good against the Dolphins O-line, Tua gets that thing out in that cookie-cutter offense so fast. He gets it to Jalen Waddle. I think if you're looking for a bankable floor, I think you go with Jalen Waddle because, I don't know, Joe Burrow against that Chiefs defense. Chiefs defense has been incredibly good over the last month plus. But let's see what the people had to say. Let's let them break the tie between us. And once again, the people are on the right side of history. The people are on the right side of history. They're on the right side of history with Matt Harmon, Jalen Waddle, and freaking Rashad Penny. You love to see that. All right. Clearly, we need to take a break. Clearly, we need to step aside here on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, we're going to look at player props from Week 17, but even more importantly, we're going to look all the way ahead to some potential rookies that are going to help you in 2022. I mean, we'll take the over-under on how many of these names I even know right after this.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management. How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed. Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
And we're back here on Fantasy Football Live. As the College Bowl season wraps up, it's a good time to talk about some potential rookies who could make a fantasy impact next season. Andy, you are a Big Ten fan. Why don't you start us off?
Well, I never see David Bell out of Purdue at the top of wide receiver prospect list, but I don't think you can convince me that there's 3 guys at the position that are any better than him. He's averaged 101.6 receiving yards per game over 3 years for Purdue. He's got good size. He's got incredible hands. And Purdue asked a lot of him over the years. He's run every route. He's shredded the Big Ten. In 3 career games against my Iowa Hawkeyes, this is 3 games. He has 37 catches, 558 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Like, I mean, Iowa's not Alabama, but they do produce pros. This guy has 9 career games with 10 or more catches and 100 or more receiving yards. If there is something that he can't do, the Big Ten has simply not exposed it.
All right, I like that one. Tank, you have your eyes on a player who is on the natty-bound Crimson Tide.
Yeah, I'm going with somebody with Alabama because, you know, they're always putting out studs, and he happens to be one of my cousins. Jamison Williams, wide receiver for Alabama. Like, he's just another cat in the long line of ballers that come out of Alabama. He has the 2nd longest receiving touchdown in Alabama history, a 94-yarder. And I mean, that Alabama history includes Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, like a lot of guys that we talk about every Sunday. And he's just another cat that's a beast. We saw what he was able to do against Georgia in that SEC championship game that propelled them to the college football playoff. And this dude has talent, and we know that Alabama scheme translates to the NFL. I feel like this guy's a can't miss, and he has the last name to do it.
Very good. Well, I'm going to mention another wide receiver. I'm not trying to reignite any team tall receiver versus team small receiver debates, but after the last 2 years, I am feeling a little nostalgic for the before times, so I'm going to talk up Treylon Burks. He is not like Jamar Chase. He is not like Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Kadarius Toney. He is 6'3" and 230 pounds, excels at contested catch situations, very physical player. Reminds me a lot of Alshon Jeffrey, and while I know that the NFL is evolving and changing, what makes him different, particularly because Arkansas used him all over the field, so I feel like his football IQ is higher than average coming into the NFL, and he's more versatile than just like an outside possession receiver, what I think a lot of people look at his size and think he could be projected to. So I think maybe, you know, what's old can be new again. So I like Burks a lot. All right, it's time to get back into the sports book. Minty and Matt are checking in on the latest player props over there. Guys, what do you have?
Yeah, we've got a great set of player props here for you. Although, Minty, I have to say, I love doing this segment with you, love doing the Sportsbook live show with you on Sundays as well. I hate this first player prop. I don't like this at all. This makes me feel bad, especially because he's in the flex in one of my championship teams. But tell me, give us your first player prop. Go on, let's just hear it.
Yikes, sorry I offended you, Matt. My first player prop is going to be A.J. Brown, under 71.5 passing yards, or receiving yards, sorry. A.J. Brown will be Tannehill's main target here, but he's only reached or exceeded this number in 1 of his last 4 games. But in Miami's last 3 games, their defense has only allowed an average of 122 passing yards through the air, which is the best in the league. So I'm going to have to go under here.
We will see what Brian Flores really thinks of Ryan Tannehill, because during the stretch of like bad quarterbacks they've faced, they've just been, you know, blitzing the hell out of these guys. We'll see if he considers Ryan Tannehill one of those bad quarterbacks. I think he can go either way. He's not as bad as Ian Book, but give me a break here. I think we can get, come on, Minty, I'm going to need some more optimism here. Another guy I've got in my own championship lineup, Ronald Jones, and I'm going to go over 72.5 rushing yards here. Now, does this make me nervous because anything that can happen to Ronald Jones will happen to Ronald Jones? Yes, of course it makes me nervous because it's Ronald Jones. Didn't exceed this total in his start last week. Of course, Keyshawn Vaughn rips off a 50-plus yard touchdown run. That was very tilting if you played Ronald Jones, but I think he can get over this here. 20 carries last week. He is the RB1 in this backfield by a good amount. And of course, the Jets have been run on the most of any team this year. They've allowed the most rushing touchdowns this year. I mean, if Ronald Jones can't do it against the Jets, what are we even doing here, Minty?
Yeah, at first when I saw this total, I was like, this is set pretty high because he hasn't really reached 70 rushing yards at all this season. But the Jets are probably going to get embarrassed by Tampa today. And with Tampa's main receivers out or limited, I can see Ronald Jones have a great day today. So I like that over with you, Matt.
25 carries for Ronald Jones. What could possibly go wrong? All right, Minty, you are on brand bringing the under in the first one, and you're on brand here with yet another kicking prop. Deliver it.
I had to end with a kicking prop here. Brian Johnson, over 5.5 kicking points. So this total is set really, really low, probably because Johnson hasn't really been utilized much as Washington's kicker. He's only been with the football team since week 13, and he hasn't even reached 6 kicking points since being on the team. But today's going to be the day Washington is going to have to settle for as many points as they can get, and Brian is going to have a day. All he needs is 6 kicking points, 2 field goals. So I think he gets there.
If Brian Johnson, who I know was a quarterback in the league at one point, if Brian Johnson isn't like the most creative name for a kicker in like Madden ever, I don't know what is. That is perfect. All right, I'm going to finish it off here. I talked about it a little bit earlier with Tank when I was destroying him in the face-off segment. Joe Burrow, I'm going to go over on 0.5 interceptions here at -145. Listen, Joe Burrow's coming off an incredible game. I know these interception props are always a little finicky here, but he does lead the NFL in interceptions. It's really no fault of his own. It's just some bad luck there. It's not as if he's up there at beefy total either. But listen, as much as he was awesome against that broken Ravens secondary last week, and the Bengals should play that way every single week. They should be pass heavy. They should be coming out early and firing. Little nervous they go back to their conservative ways, and especially nervous the matchup is all the way on the other end in terms of the difficulty scale here. Since week 10, the Chiefs are 3rd in EPA allowed per play. They're 3rd in EPA allowed on passes right now. They have been great in terms of rushing the passer, in terms of defending the pass overall. I wouldn't be surprised if this is much more of a struggling outing for Joe Burrow here against the Chiefs this week. It's all, like I said, all the way on the other end of the difficulty scale here, Minty, although I hate to talk poorly about your Bengals.
Yeah, he hasn't thrown an interception in 3 straight games, and as much as I don't want to agree with you, I think he will turn the ball over at least once against the Chiefs, who have recorded some of the most interceptions, so I kind of like that over.
Chris Jones and the boys going after that offensive line, that could be a problem. What is not going to be a problem is when you people out there come back right here at Yahoo Sports and check out Minty and I on the final edition of Yahoo Sportsbook Live, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking about the live lines that are up for the games that will be happening at that time. We'll be previewing the games later. We'll be doing some more player props. You can't miss it. Last one of the season. Send in your questions on social media, and we will see you there.
All right, for our second over-under, we're looking at the Sunday night game in frozen Green Bay. Going to be super cold. And we're talking Aaron Jones against Minnesota, and we're setting a pretty reasonable scrimmage yardage line here of 89.5. And I am actually going to take the under on this one. Jones actually hasn't hit this total since October, not since week 8. A.J. Dillon is now consistently playing 45-50% of the snaps in that backfield. And it has impacted Jones. That and obviously injury has impacted Jones. He has 10 touchdowns on the year. He's got 47 catches. So I'm not going to say that he's any sort of disappointment. He's been fine. But you're chasing touchdowns with this play. He's not going to pile up yards for you. I'm going to take the under here. Matt, how do you feel about that?
I'm going to disagree with you, Andy. I'm actually going to take the over here. Look, for a couple different reasons. I expected this to potentially be a pretty even split between these two Green Bay running backs, potentially even favoring A.J. Dillon. Well, at Old Takes exposed myself on that one because over the last 2 weeks, it's been much more of the Jones show. He's been much more involved than I expected. He's been clearly ahead of A.J. Dillon in the pecking order. We expect that to continue this week on Sunday Night Football. At least I do. And this is a great matchup, too, for a running back. I mean, the Vikings defense has been horrible all year long. We should expect the Packers to be controlling the action against a Sean Mannion-led operation. I think A.J. Dillon can maybe potentially get his, too, but Aaron Jones should lead the show here in a run-heavy game script.
All right, Tank, I dare you to agree with Matt Harmon. It hasn't happened all year. There's no way it's happening now.
I know it hasn't happened all year, but, I mean, you should have let me go first, so then he would have had to agree with me. But, like, yeah, Harmon and I actually agree for once, I guess, since Ayuk isn't involved. But, I mean, I really like what he's saying right now because it remains true because the Green Bay Packers actually lost to the Vikings earlier this year. So they're going to come back with some revenge against a backup quarterback. I feel like the game script, at least the projected game script, the way I see it, is going to lean heavily in Green Bay's favor. They're going to be playing with the lead. It's going to be cold weather. I feel like they're going to run the ball a lot, not only with Aaron Jones, but also with A.J. Dillon. So I feel like everything just projects the right way for my man Aaron Jones to have himself a really good day. And also, too, whenever teams play each other twice, they tend to change up the script a little bit. And so with Aaron Rodgers and my man Devontae Adams really getting off in that first matchup, I can see a game where the running backs kind of get involved a little bit more. And so that's what gives me even more conviction on Aaron Jones going over this number with the combination of running pass yards.
Oh, love to see you two come together on something like this. Love to build bridges here on Fantasy Football Live. We've got one last.
I hate to see it.
We've got one more
Can we
over
do like a
later in
virtual
the show.
hug here?
It's happening. I feel happening. Well, let's enter for a fresh batch of fantasy sleepers.
All right, let's get to some sleepers who could do damage for fantasy managers. You know, there's nothing better for the old blood pressure than pinning your championship hopes on a player that's logged just 57 total snaps on the season. But hey, if your heart held up over the last 2 years, it's probably fine, just like Keyshawn Vaughn. In Week 16, the Bucs RB2 carried the rock 7 times for 70 yards and a score. He also logged a snap share of nearly 35% with Leonard Fournette and Gio Bernard sidelined. That kind of involvement in combination with a positive game script. Listen, the Bucs are 13.5-point favorites. Gives Vaughn flex appeal. Don't forget, and I'm not sure you could, Matt mentioned it a little earlier as well, the Jets have been the most generous team to opposing running backs, allowing an average of over 33 fantasy points per week to the position. Wow. Well, if you thought Vaughn was kind of a deep dig, how about John Bates? It is possible that you don't even know who that is, so I'm gonna tell you. A 4th-round rookie out of Boise State, Bates has managed a snap share above 68% since Logan Thomas tore his ACL in Week 13. A lot of people thought that Ricky Seals-Jones would replace Thomas in the starting lineup, but Bates has not only recorded more snaps, he's also run more routes, and he out-targeted RSJ in Week 16, converting 2 of 3 balls for 45 yards and his first career score. I think he finds the end zone again today versus the Eagles. Philly has been ultra generous to tight ends, allowing the most fantasy points and 12 touchdowns, including one to Evan Ingram last week to the position. So if you're throwing darts, man, give the big man John Bates a look. Matt, if you don't mind, why don't we check back in the chat and find out what the people are mulling in their fantasy title games?
Yes, someone, now I lost her name. Okay, there we go. Fernando on the YouTube chat. I love this. This is a question. It's not a roster question, but Andy, I like this one when the people give us some suggestions on the rundown. Fernando says, have they even talked about Mike Evans yet? No, I don't believe we've talked about Mike Evans yet. So Andy, talk to us about Mike Evans, who's, limited potentially against the Jets. What are you doing with old Mike Evans? Meanwhile, Antonio Brown looks great in warm-ups, apparently.
Yeah, it's a somewhat tricky situation because we expect Evans to play limited snaps, but oftentimes, when you actually get in the heat of a game, coaches kind of throw that snap count stuff out the window, right? And they'll use Mike Evans as much as they need to use Mike Evans. And I would also expect that when Mike Evans is on the field, they're throwing to him more, right? Like they're not going to waste his snaps. They're not going to waste his opportunities. We know that they love him at the goal line. I still think he's got a good shot at finding the end zone. You're not going to get 8 catches for 120 or whatever you might expect from a fully functional Mike Evans this week. But as somebody who can give you 40 yards and a touchdown, yeah, I think that's in play.
I think that's definitely in play. You mentioned they'll probably get him some use around the end zone, of course. Although when he's in there, they're going to use him. How much are they going to really need him against the Jets? That's a fair question, though. This is another good one, a situation we haven't touched on yet, I believe, either. Akeem on YouTube wants to know, A.J. Dillon, Bart Scott, or your guy you mentioned earlier, Jarrett Patterson, in a full PPR. We haven't really talked about this Eagles backfield yet with Miles Sanders out. Andy, how are we feeling about Boston Scott and these other 2 options this week?
Yeah, I feel a little bit better about Jordan Howard this week, only because we've seen the Eagles absolutely fully commit to him as a goal line runner this year. It's happened with Boston Scott, but it hasn't been an every week thing. I almost always guess wrong on the Eagles backfield because they give us so many options that we have to pick from, right? Like if Kenneth Gainwell scored 2 touchdowns today, that wouldn't be a surprise to me. I think the cleanest path to 20 touches in this thing is probably Jaret Patterson. I don't know that he's the right answer here, but I think the volume is all with Patterson.
All right, last question we'll take here, and I'm compromising my integrity for this one. Someone named Ryan Dornbush wants to know, for a fantasy championship, need 1.5 point PPR here. James Conner, Jordan Howard, Jaret Patterson, or Ogunbowale from the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to go ahead and nix that last one. You don't need to be playing any Jaguars against the Patriots. Going to go ahead and say no on that one. I'll make the executive decision there, Andy. But for one other spot, obviously James Conner injured. There's a risk there with it being a later game. You just talked about Jaret Patterson and Jordan Howard. Would you just play one of those and not worry about James Conner later?
Yeah, first of all, I think this is fraudulent. There's no way that Ryan Dornbush is playing for a fantasy championship. That's definitely not happening. I would go Patterson. Yeah, I think Patterson is probably going to see like twice the workload of Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard, always a decent bet to find the end zone, but I think the workload here again is all with Patterson, and I don't think I could trust James Conner this week.
Yeah, I'm doing some last-minute Twitter searching for James Conner, and I just see a lot of people. Oh, there's somebody adding him. Bro, are you playing? I'm in my championship. Is that Ryan? I don't know. That's someone named Jonathan. Never mind. All right. Well, clearly this entire segment has been compromised. This is my integrity is down the drain, which we knew was very high to begin with. So, on that note, let's step aside here on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, we've got a barn burner of a matchup between the Steelers and Browns on Monday Night Football. We got an over-under in that game, though, to keep you potentially interested. That's going to happen right after this.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management. How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed. Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
All right, let's jump into our final over-under the show. As promised, it's on the only player that anybody cares about in the Browns at this point in fantasy is Nick Chubb. We're going to set an aggressive line here at 129.5 rushing yards. And, I mean, I'm not going to go under on the last over-under of the season. I am going to go over on this one. It is aggressively high, but Nick Chubb is aggressively good at football. That is for sure. And the Steelers are aggressively bad at defending the run. Since week 12, they rank 31st in EPA per rush attempt allowed. They let Donta Foreman ring them up for 100-plus yards a couple weeks back. They have been bad at defending the run basically all season. It's been a great matchup to throw your running backs out there against them. This is one of the best running backs in the game. I think he can clear this high number. I think he can get into the 130 range, and I think for sure that there is 0% chance that Vinty's going to agree with me on this one.
Yeah, this number is set so high. Whoever set this was just begging me to take the under, Andy. So, in every game he's played against Pittsburgh, he has gone way under this total, and he's only hit this total once this season. And I know the Steelers have a pretty leaky run defense, but it's a divisional matchup, and the Steelers will be able to stop Chubb here, so I gotta go under.
Yeah, it's a leaky run defense, but if they're leaking this bad, they definitely need to call a plumber. All right, Liz, break the tie here and potentially be a little more reasonable than I am.
So let's sit back for a second. This man just rushed for 125 yards on Christmas Day. He's had extra time off to rest. It's a primetime game. You mentioned the Steelers' leaky, plumber-needing defense, right? But 129, guys. Come on. I have to take the under. I fearlessly forecasted running backs this week. I have him clearing 100 yards, sure. Also, this is Big Ben's last home game at Heinz Field. Like, ticket sellers are trying to go crazy to pack the place. I gotta believe that everybody on that squad on both sides of the ball stands up for Big Ben in this moment. So while I do think Chubb is a league winner, I don't see him clearing 130. I'll take the under.
Yeah, again, you two are probably a little more reasonable than I am, but the end of my reasonableness is going to continue, okay? Because we've got a very, very special edition of the Fantasy Football Survival Kit to commemorate a very special thing that happened this year. Let's take a look.
The man with the best hair in the business, Matt Harmon, came in with the #1 score this week. All right, so we got Matt Harmon. He won because of Uke. That's all I can say right now. Uke. Like, if he balls out again, I will say the full name. Harmon actually leads. I don't think I've seen Harmon in the lead since Harmon has been here with us.
Yeah, anyone notice that Tank has started going the wrong way in these standings ever he started this whole I don't say Brandon Ayuk's name bit, and I've been climbing upwards ever since I started playing the guy every single week. You absolutely love to see it.
Ooh, I can't believe Harmon. I'd rather have Rev in first.
Sharing this title with Brandon Ayuk right now. I play him every week. Play him every week, Tank. Tough scene for you, buddy. Say it, buddy. Say it.
Brandon Ayuk. This dude balled out against the Cincinnati Bengals. I still don't know how in the hell he got in the end zone on that overtime play. But the dude, I've been dogging you all season. Baby, you finally came through. Brandon Ayuk. Like I said, the fantasy guys hate us. And that's why Matt Harmon's in the front right now. And that's all I really got to say about that. It looks like Harmon's going to get his first damn title, and I hate everything about it.
Well, that was a treat. You absolutely love to see that. But I think it's time to bring in a special guest to help me commemorate this occasion. Joining me now is 49ers wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. Brandon, first question. Should Tank be embarrassed with the way this season played out for him?
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He should be embarrassed. But back to me and you here. I think you could argue that, like, my success started this year. My season turned around when you became a top 15 wideout in the back half of the year, and I played you, like, every single week at a value.
That was huge. That was huge. I'm not sure exactly.
I am exactly sure that was the reason this whole thing turned around. Honestly, I think you could say that we should maybe share the title. Like, how about that? Me and you, co-champions, Brandon.
It feels good when you made your block, you took care of your guy.
I appreciate you taking care of me, man. I'm your guy, you're my guy, the whole thing. But back to Tank, though, seriously. He didn't even come in second this year. That's humiliating. What do you think was the biggest factor in him blowing it this year?
I would say, it could be a bunch of different reasons.
Yeah, we could go down the list here, I think, and list a lot of different reasons where he let himself down. But I do think, Brandon, the right thing to do in the spirit of giving, would be for us to help him out this year. Maybe try to get him better for next year. You think we should help him out a little?
I'll be in his office on Monday talking to him.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that conversation. And Brandon, thank you so much for joining me and not just crushing it this year, but also in dunking on Tank. That's what this whole thing has been about. Wow. Doesn't that just look right? DFS champion, Matt Harmon. Eat your heart out, chumps. What a great look here.
That was amazing. That was good.
Well, this has been fun. Been beautiful to win something. Just what a great year 2021 turned out to be, especially with me. Tank, I think you had one weekly victory, bro. What do you have to say for yourself?
I mean, it's the reverse Oreo right now. I'm just a homie in the middle. I've been in the middle all season long. I mean, it happens sometimes, man. I mean, I feel like I guess I can't win them all, so we got to spread the wealth sometimes. I mean, we can't have a monopoly. So you got your win, but you saw the name that was on that board more than any other, and that's T-Dub. We will be back.
Well, that's adorable.
Living in the
past.
That's
precious. All right, well, that's enough of this. I've had my fun. Let's send it back to Tank to tell you who to play in DFS this week. A week that doesn't matter because it's not a part of this channel.
It is a week that matters because you can still win money. So what it do, baby? It's your boy T-Money with our week 17. Ballers on the budget. Now, first I'm going off. Hey, if you're trying to win that money today, we've been talking up Trey Lance. He's really cheap at $20, but if I'm going for the throat, I'm going with Matthew Stafford going against those Baltimore Ravens. They give up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. We understand that he had a really good matchup against the Vikings last week, and he dropped the ball. I don't expect him to drop the ball this week. My man Rev said that Cooper Kupp gonna have 184 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And you know who's going to be the man throwing it to him? Matthew Stafford. Let's go, Matty. Now, at running back, I'm going with my cousin because I got to throw a cousin in for the last show, Darrell Williams, in that matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't give a damn what the matchup is. All I know is his last name is Williams. There's no CEH. He going to get a lot of volume in the run and the pass game, so baby, just load him up and let him ball. Now, at wide receiver, I'm sticking in that same game with the Rams and the Ravens, but I'm running it back with Marquise. I mean, he got an illness, but it ain't COVID. As long as my boy on that field, I'm expecting a lot of points going back and forth in this game. Now, I will tell you this. Mark Andrews is the play. I don't know how many times I said on this show throughout the year, and it always rings true. People target the Rams with the tight end. Mark Andrews is going to ball, but my man Marquise Brown is only $20. That's a good value in the game that's going to probably shoot out. And finally, at tight end, I got to have a Stanford guy. Since we didn't do anything on the college field, we're going to ball it out in the pros. Zach Ertz, only $17 against those Dallas Cowboys. This is one of the highest scoring projected games on the slate. My man Zach Ertz, coming from tight end U, has 24 targets in the last 2 games. 24 targets in the last 2 games, and this dude is only $17. Tell me what I'm missing. Make sure you throw him in your lineup because you know why? The T is for the money and for the king.
He hasn't played since Halloween. He was the absolute right answer in fantasy football for 8 weeks, no question about it. Averaged over 135 scrimmage yards per game, was on pace for 20 touchdowns. And like, remember, he was also going to double up his single season high in receptions as well. They were throwing it to him a little bit. Guy's going to be 28 next season, so it's not as if he's going to be completely cooked. I think he has a chance to reestablish sort of that vintage Derrick Henry style in the NFL playoffs, and we're going to view him as a sure thing top 2, top 3 fantasy pick next year.
All right, Matt, are you agreeing with Andy here on the number 2 pick next year?
I agree with just about everything that Andy just said. Number 1, in that I almost kind of considered Cooper Kupp here as well. Thought about it for a second. And he's right to mention that my good pal, my buddy, this handsome and excellent Tank Williams, made a great point earlier in the show, which was nice to see that happen. Like you mentioned, everything can happen once. It was a great point. Like, Derrick Henry basically carried you for the first part of the year. There's so many good vibes with Derrick Henry. And like you pointed, it took Jonathan Taylor forever for him to supplant Derrick Henry, the leading rusher this year. That's how much of an advantage he gave you when he was playing. I see no reason, especially because of how like identity-free the Titans have been since losing Derrick Henry. They've just tried to, like, let's just keep the seat warm. We'll just do the same offense, but we'll just try to make Donta Foreman like a discount light beer version of Derrick Henry. That's been whatever, hit or miss. They haven't changed their stripes at all. I doubt that they change anything when Derrick Henry gets back in there. So yeah, I think he will be the number 2 pick, especially as Andy mentioned. Again, agree with everything he said. If we get a couple good Derrick Henry moments in the playoffs, set it and forget it. He'll be the number 2 pick next year.
Yeah, that's all fine and nice. And while I'm not contractually obligated to mention Austin Ekeler here, and I might be a little bit biased, can we please give the man some respect? His name is pound for pound for a reason. He's the RB3 overall in fantasy, and despite all of the concerns about his stature, oh, he's not a workhorse back, he has not missed a single single game due to an injury. Second to Jonathan Taylor, he has the most touchdowns total, 17 on the season. He leads the position in receiving yards. I mean, you want a consistent player at this position, and Austin Ekeler, again, second to Jonathan Taylor, which is why he should be number 2 in 2022, is that guy. It's time we give him a little respect and also applaud his self-awareness. He's not CMCing it out there being like, give me the ball 30 times a week so I can break down. Also, did Derrick Henry finish the season? Nah. Did Joe Mixon miss time with an injury? Yeah. How about, Nick Chubb? Him too. Austin Ekeler is self-aware. He's excellent. He's a dual threat. He's attached to a lit offense. He's my number 2. And that is my piece right now. So we have to take another break here in Fantasy Football Live. My producer is in my ear urging me to go on. But when we come back, Minty and I run through her best bets for Week 17. Don't go away. It's too fun right now.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management. How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon.
Yeah,
The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed.
Yeah.
Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
All right, and we are back. Minty, it is time for you and me to debate your best bets for one more week. What do you have?
All right, this one is my best bet of the entire week. The Arizona Cardinals +6 over the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I've been getting a lot of hate for this pick for some odd reason because everyone is in love with betting on America's team, and they finally don't stink this year, and they're actually the most profitable team to bet on this year in terms of covering the spread. Now, 6 points, though, is a lot to catch with the Cardinals, and I think it holds so much value. The Cardinals are great as underdogs, and they're great on the road as well, going 7-1 against the spread and straight up on the road this season. So my money is on Arizona +6 and for them to win straight up at +200.
Ooh, I like it. You know, I think you're getting a lot of heat because the Cardinals have looked so off over the last 3 weeks, right? They've dropped 3 in a row. Last week, they narrowed the deficit, though, to just 6 points, which is this line. And we know how good Dak is at home. But December, late December, I guess it's January now. Shoot, this week 17. Like December, early January football hits different because playoff implications, like real football playoff implications, are in play here. And the Cardinals, even though both these teams are making the playoffs, the Cardinals have an opportunity to move up to the 3 seed if they beat the Cowboys and the Ravens beat the Rams. Like, is that likely to happen? Nah, but the Cardinals have to play like it could and it should and it will. So I am with you. I think the Cardinals can absolutely cover this 6-point spread.
Ooh, love it. All right, for Sunday Night Football, we've got the Vikings and the Packers, and I really don't like this matchup. I really liked the Packers when they were -6.5 before the Kirk Cousins news. So now I'm going to settle with the total set at 42.5. I think it's pretty low here. I just don't see any value in betting on either team. The Vikings defense is allowing some of the most yards per game and points per game, and the Packers haven't looked hot on the defensive side as of late, allowing nearly 370 total yards per game and almost 30 points per game in their last 3. So I like the over at 42.5.
Minty, I would love to have an entertaining game on Sunday evening. But it is supposed to be 1 damn degree in Green Bay, Wisconsin this evening. And I know that the Vikings are a cold weather team, but they play in a dome. And Sean Mannion grew up in California, and don't squawk at me about how it gets chilly in Northern California. 1 damn degree. No, thank you. We got Dalvin Cook healthy, Adam Thielen not, Captain Kirk behind the plexiglass, and Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw for more than 260 yards ever anyway. That all leads to a low-scoring game. I'll take the under.
All right, well, for Monday Night Football, we've got the Browns and the Steelers. I love the Steelers plus 3.5 here. This one's going to be ugly. I bet on the Steelers last week plus 10 against Kansas City, and they got blown out. But Kansas City is a high-caliber team, and the Browns are not. Both teams play pretty slow games, and Kevin Stefanski is 1-9 against the spread in divisional games, while Mike Tomlin, as the home underdog, is 12-2-1 against the spread. So I'm going with the trends here, and I'm going with Big Ben in his last home game at Heinz Field. So I like the Steelers plus 3.5, and for them to win straight up as well.
Minty, that was a lot of gorgeous analysis, but what you said last is the most important part of it. I am not betting against Big Ben in his last home game of his career. I agree that the Steelers win this one. I'm taking them.
Love it. Love when we agree on this one. So hopefully they all hit.
All right, well, before we get to more of your questions, let's ponder the future for a second and make some bold fantasy predictions for 2022. Guys, what do you have brewing over there in your galaxy brains?
Yeah, let's get bold, recklessly and just nonsensically bold. Nobody is going to remember any of these predictions next summer, so we're just going to say some foolish stuff because we haven't done that enough on this show already. We want your boldest fantasy predictions for 2022. Matt Harmon, start us off.
Yeah, let's start off. We know we're going to see Trey Lance today. We talked about him in the moment, living in the present reality at the top of the show. But let's think about next year. I think Trey Lance could be a top 5 quarterback next year. That is bold, that is aggressive, but it is not out of the range of possibility. A couple things here. Number one, we know the rushing upside. We talked about it already. That is just, look, that's how, like, Lamar Jackson. Andy predicted him to be the QB1 the year he first started. Boom, happened. How Josh Allen vaulted up to the top of the quarterback rankings. Boom. Trey Lance can do that as well. That is going to push him up into that top 5 range once he gets firmly established as a starter. And the reality here is, as good as the 49ers offense has been at times, you know, with Debo, with Brandon Ayuk, with George Kittle, all these guys out there, you can watch his team, and you cannot tell me there is not meat left on the bone by Jimmy Garoppolo doing his little middle-of-the-field only passing thing. I think Trey Lance can open this offense up, can open it deep down the sideline, everything there. I think we're going to see, maybe is this going to be an Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes transition? I don't know about that, but hey, what if Trey Lance crushes today and it's like a Alex Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo plays that part 2 Colin Kaepernick transition for the 49ers once again. And I know the Green Bay Packers would love to see a mobile quarterback in the playoffs again. We know how that has gone in the past. So, yeah, give me Trey Lance, top 5 quarterback next year.
I love it. I think we get a taste of it today. Tank, what do you got?
I just feel like frustrating the hell out of fantasy owners, managers even more. So I'm going with my cousin, Javonte Williams, top 5 fantasy running back next year. I know everybody wanted to see it this year, and it didn't happen because Uncle Melvin is a hater. Because Uncle Melvin is still good. Like, Vic Fangio is an old school coach, and so, like, he wanted to go ahead and split the carries between Melvin and Javonte, which is understandable because both of those guys were able to do work. But guess what? Melvin Gordon's contract is up this year, which means that Javonte is going to get all the volume next year. And we saw what he did against the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, he went into that game where Uncle Melvin was out and ran down their throat when they knew he was going to get the ball. They couldn't stop him. So just imagine if Aaron Rodgers were to leave Green Bay and mosey on down to Denver, or somehow Denver ends up with a competent quarterback. Like, he's doing that when both quarterbacks are either average or subpar. Just imagine them having a really good quarterback and this dude getting all the volume. I feel like he's a can't miss. He has the last name to do it, which means he will do it. Javonte, top 5 in 2022.
Oh, sure. Anybody could take a good player in this segment. Where's the fun in that? I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence. And I'm here to tell you that I think Trevor Lawrence can still finish next year as a top 12 fantasy quarterback. Imagine an alternate universe in which the Jacksonville coaching staff wasn't just criminally dysfunctional this year, and in which that team's coaches weren't just like chosen randomly from a list of bad ideas. In that universe, perhaps they would have maximized Lawrence's obvious strengths, coached up his shortcomings. I know he has just one touchdown pass in his last 8 games. That's kind of ridiculous. But he also has the most dropped passes in his receiving force so far this season. The arm strength here is great. He made some phenomenal throws in the Jets game. Also, he's quietly rushed for over 300 yards on the season. He's averaging almost 5 yards per carry, so he's a dual threat guy. Give him a healthy Etienne, another outside receiver, grown-ups as coaches, and I think Trevor Lawrence can make a little fantasy noise. Okay, those are our bold predictions next year. But what happens if you finish last in this year's fantasy league? Let's consider some fantasy punishments. Take
equivalent of like holding a sign and twirling it around at a stoplight or an intersection. Maybe better as a screenshot? Okay, this is a look. My team isn't, but if yours was, you could check out this filter and proudly wear a toilet bowl seat around your head. That is more like it. Fantasy championship crown with a football. Cool, cool, cool. Didn't even know that was prepared for the show, but I love it. All right, we are just moments away from kickoff, so let's get to as many social media questions as we can. And let's start with this one from a human named Hector, PPR for the chip. Mike Williams with a Herbert stack versus Denver, or Michael Pittman versus the Raiders. Matt, who are you feeling?
Oh man, yeah, this is a couple good options here. I really think like Michael Pittman is gonna come in for a pretty strong outing against the Raiders. Good matchup there. That's my initial lean. Of course, can't go wrong with Williams either. But yeah, give me Pittman. I just think the volume is more bankable there. But yeah, nothing wrong with Mike Williams either.
All right, Andy, I'm going to ask you this one. It's from Adam. Michael Carter versus Tampa Bay. Jarrett Patterson versus Philly. Boston Scott at Washington. I, too, need Patterson to manifest some mojo, but I have Carter in that same lineup as well. So which of these 3 running backs do you think could help Adam win a championship?
Just to be clear, I think Carter is the best player here, but I'm not picking him, not in a matchup that team. Been so against the run here. Maybe they can get a little Carter in the green. Maybe this is I'm not this bullish on Patterson. I feel like I've now picked him but I'm gonna pick him again. I just get a real clear path to 18 touches, 20 touches, something like that. I'm just gonna chase volume.
All right, Patterson with the volume pick. Minty, this next one is for you. It's from Stick, and Stick asks, who are your top picks to win each conference?
Ooh, well, I like the Packers at 2-1 right now, and the Bucks at 3-1 for the NFC. And for the AFC, I can't stray away from the Chiefs plus 150, but I also like the Colts maybe at 8-1 odds there for the AFC.
All right, Tank, this next one is coming for you. Christopher, it's Christopher's championship week, guys. Just him, I guess. So he needs a lot of help with this question. It's Zach Ertz at Dallas or Gerald Everett for Detroit. Tell him, Tank, why he should pick Zach Ertz.
Well, Christopher, unless you just kept tuning in to the show, on my Ballers on the Budget, I told you that Zach Ertz has 24 targets in the last 2 weeks. I don't give a damn about Russell Wilson, that janky finger, him not, playing for Pete Carroll anymore. Zach Ertz, 24 targets and probably the highest projected point total on the slate. Give me all that in a bag of chips.
Okay, Matt, this next one is for you. It is tough. I'm going to go slow. Michael asks, in a half-point PPR league, he needs one of the following: DK Metcalf versus Detroit, DJ Moore at New Orleans, no thank you, Damian Harris coming off of that 3-touchdown effort versus Jacksonville, Javonte Williams, Tank's cousin, at the Chargers.
I'm with you on the no thanks real quickly to DJ Moore there. Totally agree on that one. Yeah, it's between the two running backs for me. Damian Harris against the Jaguars with Ramondre Stevenson back in the mix, or Javonte Williams. I'm going to go with Javonte Williams. I just have no faith, like 0.0 faith in the Chargers being able to stop the run. They do not have the guys that Brandon Staley needs to run his style of defense. It's nice when you want to concede rushing yards. You're conceding all of the rushing yards at this point. Javonte Williams is a big playmaker. He's a big play threat. Give me him in this very difficult discussion here.
I thought that was a really hard question, but I'm 100% with you, Matt, and I'm glad you picked Javonte Williams because week 17, the previous week 16, was the week to go big on high ceiling players, and given the matchup, we know that Williams is going to break like 4,000 tackles. That's an Andy Barron's projection, in fact. Another Michael, a different one I hope, has a question. It's going to Tank. Would you play C-Pat, Cordero Patterson versus Buffalo, or J-Pat versus Philly? We already know what Andy thinks about Patterson, so what do you think about it?
Oh, man. I mean, both have really tough matchups. Dang it. I mean, honestly, I think this is why I go with the known quantity. I mean, we know that Cordero Patterson, Corduroy, he's going to be involved in the run game. He's going to be involved in the pass game. I'm not sure how much J-Pat is going to be involved in the pass game, even though we don't have McKissick, we don't have Gibson. I mean, I think that's why I just go a little bit more conservative when it comes to the chip, and I go to known quantity versus an unknown, especially when both of them have tough matchups. So I guess I'm going to roll with Corduroy. I don't like either, though.
Yeah, it is a tough one, but I understand your thinking here. Next question is from Bruce Anderson. In my half-point PPR, he's flip-flopping between Amari Cooper versus Arizona, Devonta Smith at Washington, and now Cortland Sutton has entered the chat with Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick out. Matt, let's close this one up. How are you going to help Bruce out?
Yeah, I don't think that Cortland Sutton is in this discussion, even though we've got injuries to those other Denver receivers, as you mentioned. Like, maybe makes him an interesting DFS play, but I really don't think you need to do that in your championship week. I would go with Amari Cooper there. I mean, obviously he came out and was requesting, in like a kind way almost, requesting some more targets in that offense. Worked out for him. I just want pieces of this Cardinals-Cowboys game, so if you can get there, I would take Amari Cooper in this discussion. And basically, I would try to break ties in favor of my Cowboys for sure, and even potentially some of these Cardinals as well.
Should be a high-scoring game, lots of playoff implications in place. Matt, thank you for that. And that is going to do it for this edition and this season of Fantasy Football Live. Before we say goodbye, a huge thanks to everyone on the production team who has worked tirelessly for the past several months to keep putting this show together week after week. And a special shout out to James Conner enthusiast, embattled New York Giants fan, and our executive producer, Ryan Dornbush, whose last show is today after nearly 10 years with Yahoo Sports. Of course, thanks to you, the viewers, the people, as Matt liked to say, for navigating another crazy season with us, asking questions, interacting in the chat. It has been our pleasure to kick off NFL Sundays with you. With that, for all of us here at Fantasy Football Live and Yahoo Sports, good luck in your fantasy championships and happy, happy New Year. We're feeling 22.